Yeah, welcome to Simply Bitcoin. The bank BNY Mellon that has 49.5 trillion assets under custody finally got the approval we've all been waiting for. Michael Saylor made this shocking prediction back in 2022 on a Twitter Spaces, claiming we needed three things for $5 million Bitcoin. And of course, the news coming out of BNY Mellon has a crucial element into that. I'm going to play you guys the clip of Saylor saying just that, speculating about what are the three things that needed to happen, three catalysts that needed to happen in order for Bitcoin to hit $5 million. And one of those things, the final thing that needed to happen, just happened. So I'll play you guys the clip. And of course, I'll bring up my co-host and our guest for today while we watch it, and then we'll discuss it.
Look, first of all, it's going up by a factor of 10 whether they fix any of this stuff, right? It's going to go a lot. It's going to be a grind up by a factor of 10 just because gold is broken and Bitcoin's going to replace gold. And now everybody in the universe knows they need a non-sovereign store of value in the form of a bearer instrument. So now they're looking, the amount of stories for last year, people said inflation may be coming. We're not sure. Now the mainstream narrative is flipped to inflation is here. You need an inflation hedge. So it's going to grind up to replace gold. It'll go to $500,000 a coin, regardless of whether they fix these things. But there are three things that are massive catalysts that cause an acceleration. And I don't think that those three things don't take us to 500,000. They take us to 5 million a coin, right? Those three things are a spot ETF where someone can go ahead and buy $100 million of Bitcoin, buy a security, an ETF security. I think that's one. Two is your bank is going to custody it for you and lend against it. And three is I can mark it up or mark it down on my balance sheet based on fair value. Pari passu. It'll be pari passu to the way I'd handle Apple stock, or at least that good. If you have property with fair value accounting, by the way, it becomes pari passu to the way you'd handle treasury bonds on it.
All right, so he said those three things. What are those three things? Let's get to them. First was the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF, which was approved, of course, in January of this year. The change in the FASB accounting rules. Michael Saylor was talking about something called pari passu that just means equal to, right? So the way that the accounting rules were before, they didn't properly reflect the asset on the balance sheet on the upside and the downside. So essentially, you were punished not so much because of holding Bitcoin, but you were punished in the accounting on accounting terms if you were holding Bitcoin, which could have been a de-incentive for companies to put it onto its balance sheet, which is why Michael Saylor said it was one of the three things that was required. And then the thing that I want to talk about today, which was the breaking news, which is what we started talking about last week when we heard rumblings of this, but it finally got approved. BNY approved by SEC for crypto custody beyond ETFs. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The three things that Michael Saylor said needed to happen in order for Bitcoin to hit $5 million per coin. Those three things have happened. The ETF approval, the change in accounting rules, and the ability for banks to custody, not the ETFs, but custody Bitcoin. Here's more details on the matter. The structure BNY is using to offer custody services for digital assets could be used beyond the Bitcoin and Ether exchange traded funds that the bank is considering, according to SEC Commission Chair Gary Gensler. Earlier this week, the bank acknowledged that it has presented a plan to the SEC's Office of Chief Accountant to custody those two assets in a way that would protect customer fund in the event of bank insolvency. The agency provided BNY with a non-objection to the plan, a regulatory term that gives comfort to the bank that its structure won't fall afoul of the agency's requirements that banks reflect the value of digital assets they custody on their balance sheet. BNY previously told Bloomberg News that the SEC's non-objection was specific to the ETF use case. Quote, though the actual consultation related to crypto assets, the structure itself was not dependent on what the crypto was. Gensler told Bloomberg News on Thursday, after he delivered a speech at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's annual Treasury Market Conference, it didn't matter what the crypto was. The Bitcoin and ETH investment products are the only crypto-related ETFs approved so far by U.S. regulators. A BNY spokesperson didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. BNY's proposed structure includes the use of individual crypto wallets, each of which would have a separate bank account and would be prohibited from being commingled with bank assets, Gensler said. It's up to the bank to decide whether to expand the pool of digital asset use cases it's comfortable custodying. Gensler credited BNY for doing the legwork on how to make sure customer assets would remain theirs and that they wouldn't be shutted to the bank, to the back of the line in the event of a bankruptcy. Thousands of crypto traders have found themselves in that position as a result of the blowups in recent years of Celsius Network, FTX, Voyager Digital, and other digital assets. Quote, this bank and any other bank, if they came in with the same structure, would get the same non-object. That part is huge. This part right here. Because they're basically admitting that the way that BNY set it up, if any other bank wanted to follow suit, the SEC wouldn't give pushback. So this is incredibly bullish. These are the three things that Michael Saylor said needed to happen. Those three things have happened. Again, quick reminder, the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF, the change of FASB accounting rules, and of course, the ability for large banks in the United States, the ability for them to custody Bitcoin. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Why would, if the SEC has been so hostile towards the industry as a whole, why would they just change tune all of a sudden? Well, use a little bit of critical thinking. Think about what your money in a bank is. It's a 2 of 3 multi-sig, of which you have one key, the bank has another key, and the state has another key. So they're actually incentivized for you to leave your Bitcoin, your assets custodied with the bank, because that doesn't change the status quo. What changes the status quo is, of course, is individuals taking back their financial sovereignty through self-custody. So I find this absolutely fascinating, really interesting. These are the three things that Saylor said needed to happen in order for Bitcoin not to hit 500,000, but $5 million per coin. Let us know. Let us know what you think in the comments. I think it's pretty bullish news from my perspective, and for that reason is simple. I think most traditional financial institutions wouldn't feel comfortable taking self-custody. We're not there yet. We're not at that point where self-custody is the norm with TradFi, right? They trust custodians because that's how TradFi has worked for like the longest time. I mean, since its inception, you could say. So, you know, there's only a couple companies like Fidelity and Jack Dorsey's Block that have taken it upon themselves to take self-custody, to learn how to do it, to apply self-custody to their companies. But the rest of the financial institutions, 8 out of the 9 ETFs, actually have their Bitcoin custodied with Coinbase. MicroStrategy actually has its Bitcoin custodied with Coinbase. So it's bullish from a price perspective, but from a revolutionary perspective, you have to keep your eye on the ball. And the eye on the ball is more individuals, more nation states, and more companies taking back their financial sovereignty and taking self-custody of their digital assets. That's my take on all this. I mean, very bullish Monday, bro. Holy crap, Opti. I mean, 180 from Gary Gensler in this, you know, but at the same time, like it's what I said, like a bank account is really a 2 of 3 multi-sig. The state holds one key, the bank holds another key, and you hold one key. So, you know, it's convenient for them, for people not to take self-custody of the digital assets. It's convenient for them to actually like outsource that personal responsibility once again to the banks.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously, in regards to what Saylor was saying, that's really going to take Bitcoin to the next level is Bitcoin, for lack of better terms, maturing and being legitimized by the fiat system. Obviously, Bitcoin doesn't need their legitimacy, but them embracing, or rather, as we like to say, them bending the knee to Bitcoin is how we win. I fundamentally believe that the institutions and nation states and all the governments of the world will have to embrace Bitcoin. And I think this is what we're seeing. I think 2024 is the year of the powers that be begrudgingly accepting Bitcoin and realizing that it's not going away. And of course, with that comes the opportunity for them to co-opt this. And obviously, I think it's a little too late for them to actually co-opt the Bitcoin network, but we are seeing that there is attempts to co-opt the network. And so I know Gary's been kind of getting a lot of heat lately on Twitter.
But let's clarify how they're going. Like, so they've come to terms with the fact that they're not going to be able to make this thing go away. I think they've come to terms with that. So what I think they're trying to do is they're trying to funnel people towards,
that's where I was going to go.
They're trying to funnel people towards the ETFs, and now they're going to try to funnel people to banks custodying their digital assets. And I think they're going to demonize, and they're going to make it like, they're going to say all these terms like money laundering. It's dangerous to democracy. I think we already heard that, actually. It's somehow dangerous to society for you to write down 12 words and take self-custody of your own assets. I think that's where the battle is going. I think that now they see the writing on the wall. This thing isn't going to go away. But I think that they realize that they can get the best of both worlds if most people are buying the ETF product rather than taking self-custody of their digital assets.
Yeah, totally. And especially when you consider the precedent that is being set right now with the Tornado Cash stuff. Remember the Gary Gensler clip last week where he pretty much outright said that very thing. Like, if you want to buy Bitcoin, you want exposure to Bitcoin, then go to the ETFs. Now we're seeing the other angle where the biggest banks in the world are seemingly getting some favoritism, and they're like, yeah, we're going to custody your Bitcoin. This is fine. Give us your Bitcoin. And all of us are like, yeah, we knew this was coming. We knew the financial world, the institutional managers of the world were going to try to embrace Bitcoin and co-opt the network. But don't give them your Bitcoin. Don't buy Bitcoin ETFs. You want to take Bitcoin into custody. We knew this was coming, but it is interesting that there does seem to be some form of favoritism going with the BNY Mellon. Obviously, Gary in the Bloomberg article said like, oh, any bank could do this, but it is interesting that BlackRock got the first ETF, BNY Mellon got the first bank custodial product. And so you see the writing on the wall, which is why we know coming down the pipeline, they've been laying groundwork for this all year of trying to make custodying your Bitcoin seem like a bad thing. I forget what was the framing they used, Nico? Non-custodial Bitcoin. I forget what it was, but yeah, they're angling towards making self-custody an illegal thing. Obviously, the more they try to ban Bitcoin, the more they're going to hurt themselves, and more people realize the use case of taking custody of your Bitcoin. As we say all the time, that is the revolution, holding Bitcoin for yourself. I'm not one of these Bitcoiners, though, that thinks that banks are going to go away. I think there will be Bitcoin banks in the future. Again, you can reference what Hal Finney said. I think it was like a month after the Bitcoin network was created. Bitcoin, I don't think necessarily obsolete banks. It obsoletes the power of the central bank having the ability to print money. I think there will be Bitcoin banks in the future, but they are going to be limited with the fact that they can only create 21 million Bitcoin. So they're going to have to be smart. They're not going to be able to rehypothecate for too long, or else they're going to blow up. So Bitcoin's incentives, I think, will stay pure. There will be some rug pulls, I think, in the future from people that are trying to get greedy and for people that don't know what's going on. But we knew this was going to happen. So it is bullish in regards to, self-hosted wallet. It is bullish in regards to the price and the legitimacy of Bitcoin. Again, like Nico said, we got to keep our heads on a swivel. Make sure you are taking Bitcoin into custody. Buy spot Bitcoin. Avoid the ETFs as much as possible. Unless you have money in the traditional system and you can't get it out, like, we're not here to tell you what to do with your money. We're just here to show you that there's an alternative, and it's taking Bitcoin into custody.
100%. And that's the revolution, right? That's how we change things. Anyways, I do want to welcome our guest for today. We have Handre. Handre is the founder of AirBTc. You can think of it as an Airbnb for Bitcoiners. How you doing, Handre?
Great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So any thoughts on, before we move on to the numbers segment, any thoughts on, this breaking news coming out of the favored banks being finally allowed to custody Bitcoin? And it was quite interesting there too as well. It's the individual bank accounts will be individual Bitcoin wallets. I mean, I find that hilarious because it's kind of like Sparrow already does that. Like Electrum already does that. Like having a hardware wallet already does that. It's like they're trying to justify their existence. Now, I understand how that would be a useful product for potentially a company that, wants to have a Bitcoin treasury and they don't want a lot of people having access to the private keys and it gets kind of complicated. But for individuals, like that is not necessary. This is what Bitcoin fixes, right? Anyways, Handre, what are your thoughts?
I think that if your coins are on an exchange or at a bank, it's not your coins, it's their coins, and in 10 years from now, it's probably going to be the government's coins. So yeah, from a price perspective, very bullish. I think Saylor mentioned all three of those things before any of them happened, and now all three of them have happened. And I definitely think that it's the next phase of adoption. But I think in the future there will be two sets of coins: those that are with institutional players and those that's in the hands of individuals. And I think those coins that go into the ETFs, into the banks, into the coin bases, I think they're going to be lost to the public at large at some point. So get your coins into self-custody, guys.
100%. I think we have a really good comment right here by Dr. Daniel Howell. He says Bitcoin will leak into banks, but it will never leak out. They're thinking out 100 years. I 100% agree with that. The self-custody is the ultimate threat to the system. Make no mistake. We're going to talk about later on in the show, we're going to talk about this crazy clip that came out this weekend of John Kerry talking about essentially how the First Amendment is a problem and how freedom of speech is a problem. And we're going to talk about what the themes are. Why is this happening? What is the pivotal shift? Why things are changing. And it's a topic that we've brought up many times on the show. We call it the great disintermediation. So what is happening right now before our eyes is the great disintermediation of information. That's what social media has enabled. That's what the internet has enabled. What's to come is the great disintermediation of money. Governments have relied on gatekeepers, custodians, it's a lot easier to co-opt a handful of gatekeepers than it is to co-opt millions upon millions of individuals talking freely and transacting freely. And that's essentially what it comes down to. It's not our fault that they built the entire control system on the fact that they were always going to be a couple of gatekeepers and custodians of which they can put pressure on. Anyways, guys, before we jump into the show, I do want to give a shout out to our lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. The reason we recommend Bitcoin Well at Simply Bitcoin is because it's an automatic self-custody Bitcoin on-ramp. What does that mean? That means that you can't even leave your Bitcoin on the platform. As soon as you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well and the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Guys, support self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramps. Remember, self-custody is the revolution. Plus, I got a bonus for you guys. When you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you could redeem those points. You could use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest for an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. We'll toss a coin into the wishing well for you guys right now. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 500 Satoshis. By the way, if you use promo code SimplyBTC, again, SimplyBTC, to sign up to BitcoinWell.com today, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well absolutely free. All right, everybody, if you are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Help us break 100 likes within the first 25 minutes of the show. Let's get to the numbers. All right, everybody, I do want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. So usually when you buy yourself a hardware wallet, it comes with a piece of paper labeled 12 to 24 words. And that's where you're meant to write down your seed words. The problem is that paper is prone to fire damage, water damage, your dog could eat it. It's definitely not going to survive the test of time, which is why we recommend our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Stamp Seed is a titanium seed phrase storage kit. It comes with everything you need to literally proof of work, stamp your seed letter by letter in the privacy of your own home into a plate of titanium. It comes with a hammer. It comes with the letter stamping tools. It comes with the plate. So you literally stamp each letter into a plate of titanium, one letter at a time. And I guarantee you that it will survive the test of time. It's fireproof. It's waterproof. Your dog's probably not going to want to eat a plate of titanium. This is the right way to store your generational wealth so that you maintain your relationship with your grandchildren. Get yourself a Stamp Seed titanium seed phrase storage kit today. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, we've had a little bit of a drop off, $63,520. Sats per dollar, 1,574. Block height, 863,523. Realized monetary inflation, 1.33%. Market cap, 1.26 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 6.85%. Money supply, 19,760,792 BTC. Percentage issued, 94.1%. Anyways, guys, we talk about the Overton window shifting. We talk about these things that we talk on Simply Bitcoin regularly about them becoming mainstream. And a lot of the indications of that are when you have people from traditional finance talking about Bitcoin, whether that's Larry Fink or this gentleman right here, the CEO of Counter Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, or whether it's people like Joe Rogan or Tim Pool or RFK Jr. Identifying some of the problems and also seeing and showing that Bitcoin fixes a lot of these problems. So here's a clip from Howard Lutnick on Legacy Financial Media. Let's check it out.
Bitcoin is a commodity. It should be treated like gold and like oil. It's just a commodity. Other digital currencies, different. Other digital assets, different. But Bitcoin is a commodity. But why can't they understand it? It just doesn't make sense to me.
So, I mean, there you have, right, basically someone from TradFi, someone from a very, very powerful and esteemed, traditional financial firm, the CEO of Counter Fitzgerald, basically saying, yeah, Bitcoin is different than shitcoins, simplifying it. But that's what he's saying. He's saying Bitcoin's a commodity. Everything else is different. Here is a 1-minute clip of RFK talking about the Federal Reserve. Now, the reason that this is so important is because, ladies and gentlemen, the Federal Reserve is the cause of most people's financial woes in the United States. In fact, if your country has a central bank, the crazy wealth inequality, the absolute theft that happens every time they print money, if you identify the root cause of this, it is the central bank. It is the Federal Reserve. So when you have people like RFK, who was running for president, now he bowed down and now he's supporting Donald Trump. Potentially he's going to be appointed to a member of, he's going to be part of the cabinet in the Trump administration. I don't know where he's going to be appointed, but when you have people of that caliber, of that level, correctly identifying the problem, we are making progress. Because most people are still psyoped into thinking that they can fix their economic woes by voting harder daddy, where in reality, they can fix their economic woes by opting out entirely. I don't think that ending the Federal Reserve through traditional political means is viable. In my opinion, I think that's almost impossible. What I think is viable, though, is people identifying it as a problem and providing a better alternative, and then individuals choosing to opt out of the system entirely, right? So they're circumventing the voting process, right? So they're basically saying, you know what? I'm not going to wait for a certain president to get elected. I'm going to take personal responsibility of my life now. I'm going to opt out of that system of theft and usury, and I'm going to opt into a system like Bitcoin. That's what it's about. So when you hear people like RFK, people like Steve Bannon, people like Tim Pool, when you see them talking about the Fed, that is a step in the right direction. But it's not just enough talking about the Fed. It is identifying and calling out and exposing the scam of the Federal Reserve while also simultaneously providing the solution. And of course, that solution is self-custody Bitcoin. Anyways, here's the clip.
The Fed is like a pump. Its function, it operates on behalf of a few Wall Street banks, and its function is to act like a pump. It is literally strip mining the wealth and equity away from the American middle class, shifting it upward. Companies in this country and financial institutions, when I was a kid, they would go out, if you wanted to make an investment, they'd go out and look at all the factories. They'd go to Michigan, they'd go to Detroit, they'd go to other parts of our country, and they'd look at the factories and they'd say, what does the management team look like? What are the production figures? What are the financial figures? What is the bank book? What is the inventory? They'd look at that and then they'd make a financial bet. That doesn't happen today. The only thing they're focused on Wall Street is, what is the Fed going to do next? And our country's been financialized, and we've allowed all of the industry to leave our country, and it's now in China. We've outsourced it.
So, okay, again, it's like a lot of people, they have correctly identified, sorry, Opti, they have correctly identified the problem, but if you just identify a problem and you don't provide a solution, you're like old man yelling at sky. Right. And I'm not saying this about RFK. RFK is awesome. I'm talking about just anyone in general. If you've identified the problem, but you're not providing the solution, you're the old man yelling at sky Simpsons meme, literally, because there is no point. You have to not only identify the problem, identify that the Federal Reserve is a scam. It's a wealth redistribution mechanism from the lower and middle classes that don't have the means to save in assets, back to the very wealthy and back to the government. That's what it is. That's how it functions. Every time they print money, that's what they do. It's literally theft. So when you see people asking politicians about what are you going to do to lower grocery prices? What are you going to do to lower the cost of housing? What are you going to do? People have to understand that government itself and their spending is the sole cause of those prices going up the way they are. However, before you get your panty in a bunch and you freak out and you say, wow, like we have to vote of this, and then you get all negative and gets all dark, there is hope. And that hope is Bitcoin. Because if you opt out of the system entirely and you don't have to ask anybody for permission and you start saving in Bitcoin, all of a sudden, your life gets progressively cheaper over time. So whether that's housing or grocery bills, everything gets cheaper as it relates to Bitcoin. And that's something that people should have to understand, because expecting the government to change tune here, right? Expecting them to change tune. Remember, it's a huge source of revenue for them. Or the fact that they could just print money out of thin air. Expecting them to change tune, expecting them to vote harder, daddy, and then that's going to effectuate change. It's a bit naive. What you can do right now as an individual is choose to opt out entirely. And that is the revolution. That is the peaceful protest. Remember, this was written in the Genesis block, right? This Bitcoin is inherently a political movement. It is a protest against currency debasement. In the Genesis block, Satoshi literally wrote, Chancellor on the brink of the second bailout for banks, because he knew that the government was just going to continue printing money and bailing out the banks at the expense of Main Street. So that's what this is about. Anyways, Opti, what's your take on this? And then we'll move it on to Andre.
Yeah, well, I've been saying this for a while in regards to influential people coming out and speaking good things about Bitcoin. I'd kind of argue that the majority of people that were already in Bitcoin, I would argue that we're more independent thinkers. And so we've done the research and we don't need people to tell us that Bitcoin is okay. But I may argue that we're a little more scarce. We're like the 80-20 mean, the Pareto principle, where it seems like 20% of the population can think for themselves, and then the rest of the 80% of the population needs the authority figures to come out and speak good about Bitcoin. And it seems like this is where we are right now. I wouldn't even argue that we're at 20% of the population as Bitcoiners. I'd argue it's a lot less than that. But we're starting to see that when influential people do come out and say good things about Bitcoin, and we are thoroughly saturating all of popular culture, that more people start to look at Bitcoin like a legitimate investment or legitimate money or something that is legitimate to own in their portfolio. And I think we are seeing this play out. Obviously, it's happening very slowly. But as I was saying, 2024 seems to be the year where we're just laying brick by brick to lay that foundation. So when the masses do come into Bitcoin and we do get another bull run or next leg up in the bull run and the price starts running and we go into price discovery mode, that people will realize that, oh, wait, I've been ignoring this Bitcoin thing for too long. And look at all these very influential, smart people talking about Bitcoin. Maybe I need to get some. And I think this is where we are right now, where people are identifying the problem. Obviously, Bitcoiners have been identifying the problem for 15 years now. Satoshi identified the problem in 2008, or rather, 2009, when he unrolled the Bitcoin network. And so slowly but surely, people are waking up to the fact that, hey, look, there is no political solution to this. If you understand anything about the traditional financial world, they have to keep printing money. That's the only way that they're going to keep the economy going. They have to inject more capital into the system, and they're not going to give up that power of just creating money out of thin air easily. So they're going to continue to print money. They're going to continue to inject money into the economy, whether it's the US or any other country in the world. This is basically the only move they have. And so you have to protect yourself. And this is what the whole show is about, is trying to hit a bunch of different examples, obviously keep you guys informed on the news, but hopefully when new people come in, they realize, oh, wow, like I need to protect myself or else I'm going to end up poor, destitute, and completely oblivious to what's happening in the world right now. And I'd argue, and I think all of us here at Simply Bitcoin would argue, and everyone in the audience would argue, that Bitcoin is the biggest technological movement that we've seen probably since the internet. And it might even be bigger than the internet, because money is one half of every transaction in the world. Money touches everything. And now we have the best money in the world to save in. And so I'm very, very hopeful that more people are going to wake up. I'm very happy about seeing influential people talk about Bitcoin, because there's a lot of people that made a platform as like an influencer that talks about politics and talks about the problems of the world, but very few people are talking about the solution. It's very simple to us here. You just need to save in Bitcoin. You need to stop using the enemy's money, aka fiat money, and start to save in the people's money, which is Bitcoin.
Amen to that. Andre, do you have any thoughts on this, my friend?
I love seeing non-Bitcoin large influencers coming in. I think it's been ramping up a lot the last 2 years, and it's especially good to see that it's mostly Bitcoin and not crypto that they're talking about. Regarding the central bank situation, I mean, the unholy trinity, Trinity, the central bank, the government, and the banks, at this stage, they have the money printers almost across the world in every country. They're not going to just roll over and die. It's going to be a tough uphill battle for us. But Bitcoin is the only thing that gives us hope.
100%, 100%. Bitcoin is hope, and it is going to be a tough uphill battle. I mean, we don't call this a separation of money and state for no reason, right? And I think the established players, governments get so much power from being able to create money for free that everyone else has to work for, and expecting them to just say, you know what, like, we're actually going to have to be fiscally responsible now, like, is a bit naive. So yeah, it is going to be an uphill battle. But again, I think if enough of the population in percentage terms take self-custody and the circular economy start to become a thing, peer-to-peer transactions start to become a thing, I'm telling you, like, there is nothing they'll be able to do about it. So anyways, guys, stay tuned. We're going to get to the news. Lots to talk about today. So we had the Secretary of State, the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, basically saying, I'm paraphrasing here, doing your own research is dangerous to democracy. So stay tuned for the news segment where we're going to cover it. Let's check it out.
A special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet design with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, Opti is going to model it for you guys right now. It does not come with Opti, but you will get yourself a discount if you use promo code SIMPLY. Get yourself a Passport by Foundation Devices hardware wallet. Remember, guys, self-custody is the revolution, not your keys, not your cheese. Passport makes it incredibly easy for you to take self-custody of your Bitcoin. This is the perfect gift to give to somebody that perhaps is new to self-custody. They don't know how to use it. It pairs up with the Envoy app. It makes it incredibly easy. In fact, on their website, you can add the concierge service to the shopping cart, and they will literally Passport themselves. Foundation Devices will literally show you how to first take self-custody of your Bitcoin. So it's incredibly awesome, very easy to use, highly recommend them. Not your keys, not your cheese. Get yourself a Passport, promo code SIMPLY. Anyways, so what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about what social media has done and the wrench it kind of threw into the control systems, the control mechanisms of society. And I'm going to connect it with what we were talking about in the beginning of the show. So what I believe we are living through as humanity, and let me pull this up first, is we're living through something that I call the Great Disintermediation. If you want to read a little bit more about this in detail, I suggest reading the book, The Sovereign Individual. They talk about it. And essentially, they make the case that information technologies was going to empower the individual, the likes of which has never seen before, and the organization of society was going to change dramatically, because all of a sudden individuals are going to have the ability to not only do their own research, choose what information they want to consume, but also choose what money they want to use. Now, unfortunately, for nation states, for governments, they've been operating for a very long time in this system where they've been able to control the information. They've been able to control the money for a very, very long time. And essentially what has happened was, first of all, let's talk about the disintermediation of information. We'll talk about the disintermediation of money at a later time. We talked about it on Friday, actually. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the show, but I want to talk about the disintermediation of information first. So governments were not prepared for mass scale peer-to-peer communications. What does that mean? That is social media. So for the first time ever, you can build a massive following without going through a handful of legacy media institutions. There's literally like 4 or 5 companies that own all the traditional media. You don't have to go through them to build up a career in journalism, broadcasting, podcasting anymore. All of a sudden, you can do that yourself. You can buy the microphone, you could buy the camera. And what's starting to happen is independent content creators are starting to get significantly more views and attention than traditional legacy media. And that starts to become a problem for the systems of control. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are saying. Nico, what are you talking about? That's a conspiracy theory. You don't know what you're saying. Well, don't take my word for it. Here's the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, talking about exactly what I just said.
So tough. Everybody's wrestling with that right now. And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously.
So, again, you have to understand the word craft and the wordsmithing that was used here, right? So we want to be able to win enough votes so that we're free to implement change. That word free, he's using on purpose for you to interpret it as a certain way. We want to be able to win the election so that we're able to essentially censor the information sources we don't control. And there's a lot of other things that he was saying, right? Which is the accountability of facts, that the First Amendment was standing in the way. Now, the reason that the founding fathers in the United States created the First Amendment the way they did was precisely because they understood that these so-called referees, right, could and would be co-opted by the government for political gain, which is why freedom of speech is the way it is. so that the free market of ideas gets to decide what idea is good and what idea is not good, not a group of bureaucratic elites in Washington, D.C. getting to decide what information is true and what information is not true. Right. So I love the wording he used because it was so insidious. He was like, accountability on facts. Weren't you guys telling us that there was going to be no inflation? Wasn't these so-called, legacy media institutions, didn't they sell us on the lie that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and that led to a horrific war where like millions of people died, and it was all under a false pretext because there was no weapons of mass destruction? So, like, again, his frustration is not on the fact that his frustration is because of social media, it no longer allows the government to sell the public on ideas that is convenient to them. That is essentially what he's saying. And I'm not the only one saying this, by the way. This is Brett Weinstein, and let's hear some of his thoughts.
Project Mockingbird was the project of the deep state to control us via the media. But it worked much better in an era where there were 3 broadcast networks. You didn't have to control that many properties. The reason that the narrative broke was because Goliath was focused on controlling the mainstream media properties, and it didn't think it had to care about the off Joe Rogan man cave stuff. Why should it care what a podcast was? Who cares what gets said on pirate radio, right? But that mattered a lot because people, when they realized they were being lied to and they were doing harm to themselves because of those lies, tuned out the mainstream media and they started searching for information elsewhere. The punchline is, if you want to beat the deep state, what you need to do is you need to drag Goliath onto territory he doesn't understand. That's where we win.
So it's what you guys have to understand. And, I'm going to connect this with Bitcoin, right? Because it's incredibly important. Freedom of speech is the front line for the battle for Bitcoin. You can't have Bitcoin without freedom of speech. And if you don't think that they're okay with you talking freely, what makes you think they're going to be okay with you transacting freely? So I'm going to connect this with Ross Stevens' piece that he wrote for NY. He's the founder of NY Dig, and which he makes the case that Bitcoin's protected under the First Amendment. Because you see where this is going. This is a pivotal moment in human history. Society is changing. The role of government in people's lives is significantly changing. And the internet is the cause of that. And instead of the government saying, you know what, like, it's good that we have a more informed populace. It's good that people have the ability to choose their own money. They're reacting in a tyrannical manner. They're saying, no. We know, because this is what John Kerry is essentially saying. We think you're too stupid to do your own research. And we know what is best for you. And we are the ultimate deciders on what is truth and what is not truth. Because if you look at the legacy media's track record over the last 4 to 5 years, it's been terrible. And I'm not even going to get into the pandemic stuff and whatever. Just let's talk about inflation. They gaslit us for a year and a half, telling us that there was going to be no inflation. And what ended up happening? Twitter was right. Bitcoin Twitter was right. They called us psychopaths at one point. And then they ended up admitting that they were wrong. So I brought up the example with Iraq and how the New York Times released a piece that basically claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It was discovered half a decade later that it was actually the intelligence agencies that were feeding the New York Times that information. And what John Kerry's complaining about is he's basically saying, we can't use those mechanisms anymore to convince the American people on things because the American people are now more and more and more relying on social media on how they're getting their news. Remember, it was the Wall Street Journal that tried to convince, they released a bogus article that tried to convince the American public that Hamas was using Bitcoin in order to raise money for terrorism. It was only after Bitcoin Twitter reacted to that, like a decentralized immune system of cyber hornets, that we literally called that bluff. We got Tom Emmer in congressional testimony to get the head of the FinCEN to admit that actually, no, terrorists prefer using the traditional financial system more than they prefer using Bitcoin. But that wasn't the point of the article. The point of the article was, again, it was a political hit job. It wasn't interested in truth. And this reminds me of one of Nayib Bukele's great articles for Bitcoin Magazine. And it's titled, "Don't Drink the Elite's Kool-Aid." And that article, he said that one of their most important weapons is their control on the truth. And they're willing to lie, smear, print, and do whatever it takes in order to control the truth. So that's what it fundamentally boils down to. And again, if we don't hold the line on the battle for free speech, we're going to have a hard time holding the line on the battle for Bitcoin. And this is what the separation of money and state is all about. And actually, I should rephrase this. This is the separation of information and state and the separation of money and state. It's just kind of happening simultaneously. One is happening before the other, but information technologies has completely changed the way that society operates. Governments were not prepared for this. And instead of reacting and saying, taking accountability and being open-minded, even in a country like the United States that has the First Amendment that is specifically meant to protect against this type of overreach, they're just saying, no, we still know what's best for you guys. Even though if you look at their track record, it's horrific. It's been terrible, right? Opti, what's your take on all this? It is a very important subject. Dude, John Kerry, holy shit. They don't even care anymore, man. They don't even care. They don't even want to hide it. They don't care to hide it. They're just literally telling you the First Amendment is a problem and it stops us from doing what we want to do. Like, that is nuts.
Yeah, my response would be, John Kerry, that is the literal point of the Constitution, is to limit this crazy stuff you guys are trying to do. Like, that is the whole point of its existence. But I do find it absolutely incredible that they go out and publicly say this stuff, which on the one hand shows where their intention are, and on the other hand just shows that people will actually believe this. And I don't know which one's scarier, that this is what they believe or that people will follow along doing this. Obviously, this was at the World Economic Forum, or a World Economic Forum conference, or whatever you want to call it, and we already know what their tagline is you will own nothing and be happy. So part of that does come down to information. Again, we always reference the Nayib Bukele, don't drink the elite's Kool-Aid. We've been seeing this happen in real time, in slow motion on this show for a long time, that they are grasping for more and more power. And as they have their last gasp of breath and power here, they're going to scramble and grab even more. And this is why we constantly talk about the importance of every single one of us out here, as content creators or not, of just having these conversations about spreading the power, the mimetic power of Bitcoin, and hopefully waking more people up to what the game is. I remember for a long time, it was very easy to just call us conspiracy theorists and relegate us into the corners. And now, the delay between conspiracy theory and fact is like 3 months. It used to be 10 years. And we've been saying this for a long time. that the more that the powers that be try to grasp down and clamp on information, the more it exposes their incentives. They do not want you educated. They do not want you informed. And they really want you exactly what John Kerry just said. They want to control the communications platform so that they can go out there, spread their propaganda. Everyone eats it, sink, line, and sinker out here. And they just go along doing all the crazy stuff they've been doing. But now they can't do it because people are noticing and communicating on social media platforms. We're all trying to get to the truth. And people, I think, are fundamentally, at least the ones that still can critically think, are truth seekers. Like, we want to know exactly what's going on in the world, because once you understand the true nature of reality, you can start to prosper and live a better life. And so the more they try to control information, I think the more it's going to backfire. Streisand effect here. And people are going to look for the truth, and people want to understand the truth, because that means you live a better life. Living with your head buried in the sand is only going to hurt you until you have enough pain and you realize, wait, I need to get new information sources, because it always reminds me of the 1984 quote of, they want you to not trust your ears or believe your eyes. And the more they do this, the more it just shows that this movement of information disintermediation, of truth seeking is growing. They are afraid of people having these conversations online because it completely destroys their narrative. And that's all they have, is the power of manipulating the narrative. So, you know, as long as enough people that have influence are talking about this stuff, most people will go along with it. But now they're having a hard time because of the cavemen like Joe Rogans of the world are talking about the truth here. Dude, and we are getting to consensus here. The true consensus comes from everyone having these conversations and getting to the fact individually, not just from these official gatekeepers of information. And now you see that they're struggling. You see that's why they're getting so mad at Elon Musk. You see this is why they're attacking the First Amendment. This is why they're trying to relegate us all into psychopathic memers on the internet. And we're just like, we just want to know what the truth is, man. Just stop gaslighting me and insulting my intelligence when, like, I have a brain still. At least, you know, it might be only barely functioning, but I think I know what the truth is here. I can get to the bottom of information. I can do my own research and hopefully live a better life. And this is what it's about. This is why they're freaking out, because they can't control the narrative anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And then, like, I'm gonna ask you guys the question, like, what is the role of government? Like, what should be the role of government? Like, this is not what government should be. Government should not be the one who is the arbiter of truth. Like, government doesn't like this. Look, government is supposed to do very simple things. I think Nayib Bukele hits the nail on the head. Okay. El Salvador went from being one of the most dangerous countries in the world to one of the most safest, and they did it all in a couple of years. Okay. Government's supposed to protect private property. Government is supposed to offer justice. Government's supposed to provide law and order. That's it, right? But government's supposed to basically being the arbiters of truth, and they're the ones that decide what truth is not okay and what truth is okay. And again, they found a very sneaky way of getting around the First Amendment by co-opting legacy media, right? But now they weren't ready for the internet. The internet is just like here. Now everyone is starting to think critically. Things are getting exposed, right? People are opening their eyes. People are communicating freely, and they're upset, and they're asking for accountability for what happened. Before, there would be no accountability. Was there accountability for what happened in 2008? Was there accountability for what happened in Iraq? Was there accountability for any of those things? There was no accountability. That's the whole point. And now all of a sudden, when people are thinking critically, and all of a sudden, like, they're waking up from the matrix and they're starting to ask very difficult questions, the people that did a lot of things that, let's just say, the truth would not be kind to, they're kind of upset and they're kind of freaking out. And you're seeing them, and John Kerry saying what he's saying is a representation of that. And I find it amusing, the word salad that he's using in order to justify taking away the First Amendment. Like, the words that he was using were like, accountability of facts. People are selling an agenda. There needs to be referees. You know, like what does that mean? What is that like? We need to be able to free. We need to be able to free to govern. Like no. Let me translate this to you. We need to be able to free to censor. That's what he means, right? And someone in the comment, the projection, or this opting in the comment, projection is strong. Anyways, Andre, what's your take on this? Then we'll get to the culture and talk about AirBTc.
I've got an anecdote for you. I recently became a father. I have a 2-year-old boy, and he always cries when I try to put on his shoes because he doesn't want to wear shoes. And then I give him I take out the shoes, a pair of red shoes and a pair of blue shoes, and I ask him, which pair do you want to put on? And then he chooses one, and then he smiles, and I put it on for him. And that's exactly what they've been doing to the population for the last 100 years or whatever, and they're losing that ability now. So they've been treating us like 2-year-olds, and now they're mad that we've woken up to the fact that they've been controlling us, and they're obviously not happy because now they're going to have to find another way to control us,
if they can. Like that, I think that like the genie's out of the bottle, like type of thing. Like I think like there's a one-way door. Twitter right now is the most popular news app in the world. Multiple countries have tried to ban it. You can Mike Benz is making the case that the State Department is using other countries to go after X because they can't do it within the country because of the First Amendment. You have John and Kerry mentioning how the First Amendment is an issue. Like they have a big problem on their hands. And I think that problem is, for the first time, the 2-year-olds are starting to think critically, and we're starting to become a big percentage of the population, and we're asking for accountability from the government. And instead of that accountability, the government is basically saying like, no, you don't have the right to do that. Well, we do. Like that's the whole point, right? That's how the US is structured. But it's crazy that they've been able to get away with this for so long. And what people call the deep state, it's not the deep state. That's people, you have to understand that. It's not the deep state. It's not this like giant conspiracy, a cabal of whatever. No. It's the administrative state. And all that means is there is an unelected bureaucracy that remains in power regardless of who gets elected into office. And that unelected bureaucracy is funded by the fiat money printer, and it continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that unelected bureaucracy is serving its own interests. The problem is, and the question that I have for you guys is, it's supposed to be a government by the people for the people. That bureaucracy is meant to serve you. You are not meant to serve it. It is your government. The problem, though, is that because they have a money printer, they don't need to come to you for revenue. The government doesn't produce revenue. It only takes from taxpayers. But as long as they have a central bank, as long as they have a fiat money printer, all they have to do is to continue the tyranny, to continue the endless wars, to continue growing this system of control, is they just need to print money. That's it. That's all they have to do. And then people are dazed and confused, and they're asking Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, what are you going to do to raise the grocery prices, when it's government itself that is responsible for the prices of groceries going up? So again, I think this is information narrative trench warfare on the battlegrounds of the internet. This is about winning over the hearts and minds of individuals and really waking people the F up, because so many people are still within the fiat matrix and they don't realize that, you know, like in the Matrix, like it's using them as batteries, man. It's just crazy. It's just crazy, all this stuff. Anyways, everybody, we're
Yeah,
gonna get to
wait,
the-
Nico. One last thing, because
Sure.
like we've said this a lot of times. You know, that's why the motto here is "Guides to the Separation of Money and State," because this exact thing is a perfect parallel of what happened when the printing press happened. I'm guessing. I can only imagine at the time they were saying the very same thing. It's like, no, you can't buy these books because they're not officially regulated by the church. Those aren't sanctioned copies of books, and everyone's like, yeah, cool story, bro, but I like this book and I'm gonna buy this book. And hopefully they print more of those books. So like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And this is why we say this is the separation of money and state, just as we had the separation of church and state with the printing press. When everyone had the decentralized power to print books, of course, if they had a printing press, then new information, or maybe information that was hidden, that wasn't popular with the established players, starts to proliferate around the world, around the globe, around society. And people get to the consensus of the truth. So again, that's the point of the Constitution, is to ensure that these people do not get tyrannical and say and do whatever they want to and manipulate the narrative. Like, that's the point.
Yeah, look, 100%. And I'm going to read this and I'm going to just change some words, right? The Matrix, 1999. Neo takes the orange pill and wakes up to find he and the rest of humankind are being used as tax cattle by their governments. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. And to quote the sovereign individual, information technologies has now given the cattle wings. So this is what it's all about. But you as an individual have to take personal responsibility, use the tools of Bitcoin, doing your own research to take back your sovereignty. All right, everybody, let's hit the culture. All right, everybody, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor. Simply Bitcoin is funded by our sponsors. So guys, if you want to support the channel, of course, you can donate to us directly. Appreciate all the zaps coming in, but also check out our sponsors. And we're very, very picky on who we choose to sponsor with. So all the sponsors that you've seen in the show are going to be companies, Bitcoin companies, that are going to help you become more of a sovereign individual. And one of those companies is the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats. Join the 12,233 Bitcoiners that are currently on the app. The Orange Pill app is the #1 resource for Bitcoin-only events. It's also a great resource for you to connect with fellow Bitcoiners that are near you. Has a very clever filtration system, so you'll only find Bitcoiners on the application. And it's one of the best ways to reach me directly. I don't really answer Twitter DMs these days or random emails. So if you want to send me a question or you want to just talk to me, you could send me a message via the Orange Pill app. You could also send Opti a message via the Orange Pill app. So scan the QR code or check the link in the video /podcast description. Download the Orange Pill app today. Stack friends who stack sats. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Opti. We have a very special guest today. We have Handre. Handre is the founder of AirBTc. AirBTc is the Airbnb of Bitcoin. So let's pull up the website. Stay anywhere with Bitcoin. Handre, I'm going to pass you the mic. What is this? Why did you create this? Is this, why should people use this instead of Airbnb?
Well, I created this business because I wanted to create something that is Bitcoin only and that has ties to the real world economy. So most Bitcoin only companies out there are either like some kind of payment or wallet software, or most other companies are a fiat on off ramp. So AirBTc we're Bitcoin only. We don't have a fiat bank account. We only do transactions in Bitcoin coming in and going out. And we're trying to harvest the power of Bitcoin by we managed to launch worldwide basically instantly, because anyone in the world can upload a property to the site and list with us, and anyone in the world can book and pay in Bitcoin. So yeah, guests can only pay in Bitcoin on-chain or Lightning, and hosts can only receive Bitcoin on-chain or Lightning.
Love it. All right, let me jump in here. Andre, one of the things that we were talking about before, and that obviously would probably hit with our audience, is this idea that you were telling me of like no KYC. So how does someone list a property here, and how does that process work?
So traditional KYC regulation and methods aren't meant to well, they're meant to censor you and to tax you, and we are not interested in that. And because we don't have a bank account and we're not linked to any specific jurisdiction, we don't really have a specific set of regulatory rules that we are forced to comply with. So our main goal with our KYC process on the site is just to keep back bad actors out. That's the only reason that we engage in these kind of actions. And so we're looking at what I think your listeners would call interesting ideas regarding KYC. We've recently approved a user through their Nostr profile. So it was very simple. We still don't know the person's real name, but they sent us their Nostr profile that proved that it belonged to them. And it satisfied what we saw. They satisfied us that they're not a bad actor, and we decided to list their property by just using that as our KYC method. So yeah, I mean, we're open to ideas and new ways to handle the problem, which I think is what should be happening more in the real world.
So, and then let me ask you something. Like, I'm sure that this is like a reputation or review based kind of system. So if someone stays at a property, can you pull that up and go through some of them again, please? The people leave reviews, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So
yes. So I mean, Airbnb has done a lot of this type of legwork, and a lot of our listings are most of our listings actually are listings that are listed on Airbnb as well. And those hosts then just prove to us that listing on Airbnb is indeed them, and we then give them a review on our site. So those 5-star reviews you've seen is a copy of their Airbnb reviews.
Okay, gotcha. And then how do you
review system?
How do you know that they are the actual owners? They're not just copy pasting.
So Airbnb and Vrbo and a lot of other, well, almost all the other sites, what they have is calendar integration. So if you have a listing with us and you have a listing with, say, Airbnb, if someone books on Airbnb, those dates need to be blocked out on our site as well so that people don't double book. And the same with us. If someone books with us, those dates need to be blocked out on Airbnb. So when the calendar integration comes through, we are able to check if that's legitimate and if it works, if it's the same property, and then we can just approve it because we know the person that we're dealing with is the host of that particular property on the other website.
Gotcha. And how has the traction been? Like, so Airbnb, I'm Airbnb, very popular with a lot of people. We use it a lot because we're like a traveling circus when we go to the conferences, and we just bring the entire team and we rent a house essentially. Like, how has been the market reaction to this? Has it been successful? Has it taken off? Do you seen a lot of interest? Or is this still like very niche to Bitcoiners specifically?
So, in my opinion, the traction that we've got has been amazing. It's been better than I originally thought it would be. The reaction from the Bitcoin community has been staggering, really good. But we got like 5,000 followers within the first month. A lot of, but I mean, still, if you take, I think there's probably more than 1 million Bitcoiners, people who are self-identify as Bitcoin around the world. I think if I'd go and total up all the views that we've had, probably just over 150,000. A lot of repeat views as well. So I still think a lot of Bitcoiners don't know about us. And obviously, a platform like this, we do struggle with the classic chicken and egg problem, where if there's no users to make bookings, then no one wants to list. If there's no listings, then there's nothing to book. So we're trying to slowly build our client base and our user base up. So we're focusing on getting more and more listings, and we're focusing on Bitcoiners and Bitcoin destinations, Bitcoin conferences, and other related events, accommodation in that area, those areas, and Bitcoin travelers such as you guys. I'm hoping to become the Bitcoin travel destination of choice, basically, where if the Bitcoin wants to travel, they would go onto AirBTc and see what there is, and then choose Bitcoin only or a Bitcoin friendly place to travel to, instead of any other way to choose your holiday.
Incredible. Opti, what's your take on all this, bro?
Yeah, well, I want to first of all just kind of mention on the whole idea of like a circular economy, and I think this is one of those great features. And on that point, Andre, I know we were talking before the show of kind of the point of this is to build the circular economy within Bitcoin networks, and you wanted to emphasize the importance of spend and replace, which might be a spicy topic for most Bitcoiners. So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I intend to be on the forefront of changing Bitcoiners' opinion about that, because what I always say to people is, when if you're only stacking sats and sitting back and you're planning to spend it in 2030 when Bitcoin reaches $1 million, you're gonna have a big problem, because what are you thinking to do? Are you gonna, if there's no Bitcoin circular economy and you can't spend the sats directly at that stage, you're gonna have to transfer your KYC free Bitcoins back onto an exchange and sell it for fiat and pay tax and then spend that fiat. So I don't think anyone wants to do that. So if we want to spend the sats, we need to get the circular economy going, and it's not really rocket science. You don't need to spend your stack. You can buy Bitcoin, spend and replace it the same way you would spend fiat. It's much easier and cheaper to spend Bitcoin than to spend fiat, especially if you're traveling overseas and you need to change between currencies and all that stuff. So I mean, we for some of the bookings that we've had, I mean, it was a guy from the USA. He booked in El Salvador. We sitting in South Africa. So I mean, that guy paid us. We paid the host. 3 different continents, basically, or countries. All across the world. Both those transactions went through Lightning Network. Both were incident free. I still don't know who the wallet address. I mean, if that had to happen in the legacy fiat system with banks, there would have been like 30 parties involved. The total cost of doing this transfer of funds would have been like 8%. So yeah, I mean, just on the transactional side of things, I mean, Bitcoin has already nullified what the legacy system was.
Love it. Okay, Andre, at the hope of keeping the show relatively short here, what's the final call to action that you want the audience to get from you, or what's the final message you want to leave with the audience? Let's get the last 2 stats. Rant away. What's the last message you want to get to the people?
Please go and check out AirBTc and see if you can book or list property. We would love we really need the help to get this thing going. The community is large, but it's fractured geographically, very far away from each other. And I think AirBTc can be a way to pull the Bitcoin community together and to really help the circular economy get going.
Love it. And for the audio listeners, AirBTc.online. So love it. I really hope to see more of this. I think we said it last week, or I might have said it. It's like one of the biggest FUD lines for Bitcoin is, oh, it's money, but I can't use it anywhere. And it's like, well, more and more examples are popping up to basically tell the world that, no, this is actually money and people want it. So whether it's like, plane travel or your Airbnb, there is a lot of services out there. So shouts out to you, Andre, and AirBTc.online. I think it's a great initiative.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Remember to follow us on Twitter, on Nostr, and we're also on Orange Pill app.
Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Go check out AirBTc.online. It's an alternative to Airbnb for Bitcoiners. Go check it out. Support the Bitcoin ecosystem. This was your Simply Bitcoin Live episode for September 30th, 2024. I'm your host. Nico is my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields, and our guest for today, Handre. Handre is the founder of AirBTc. Go check out AirBTc.online today. All right, everybody, if you guys enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. And go outside, touch some grass, get some sun, eat some steak, enjoy your family. And we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live, the first episode of October. Peace out, everybody.
It's brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.